actually a rather reserved and quiet person.
We've done the thing.
We've done the thing, we did the stuff, we've been in it and out of it and through it and all up in it.
That's a lot of doing.
Ever going to meet Fran Drescher. I'm just not. Okay.
You fucking alien.
I knew that's the
I knew that was gonna happen. I've just been waiting for it.
online
Damn.
shuffleboard. You're gonna get your ass beat by my old cane having ass.
You just make eye contact with the family. Is like, I'm going shit on that.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another cozy episode of Morgan and Foggy in the Coffee Lounge. I'm joined today, as always, by my partner in crime, my number one uno best friend, Mr. Morgan.
Hello, it's me. I'm Morgan.
So a couple of things before we get started with today's episode that I wanted to just make like perfectly clear. So number one, obviously it's been some time since our last lounge. I want to say that in past tense, fallen on some rather difficult health scenarios, and then just like life was just kicking me in the teeth, physically and also
repeatedly.
Yeah. That's the number one thing. So it's been a while since I've made any content, much less been able to get out here and get on here with Morgan and talk about, you know, the things that we love doing and love talking about. And then the second thing that I did want to say was this really cool thing has happened, and I wanted all of our listeners who do listen to go over to Spotify or wherever this new podcast is playing and check out The Tub. And that's Koji's new podcast. And I know it's not a sister podcast of ours, but I really feel like it is because him actually guest appearing on one of our episodes is what inspired. And he told me this, that it inspired him to do it.
Really?
And
that's awesome.
yeah, and I felt so good about it. And it just felt, you know, like not that I feel like we deserve any credit or anything for it, but it's just like I really want him to feel the love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so
sure.
like I would love for everybody who listens to this podcast to go check out The Tub. And I actually also had the dubious honor of being one of his first guests on his first episode, which was really cool. I was very, very honored that he even asked me. So yeah, that's the two things I wanted to talk about before we got started on today's episode.
Yeah. No, honestly, that's really cool. When he announced that he was going to be starting up his own podcast, I was one of my first thoughts was, that's so cool. Like, he was just on here with us, so that's really interesting timing, and that's awesome. I hope he has fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and I was always telling him, you know, because we would have a lot of conversations, and I would tell him all the time, like, this is my favorite thing that we do. It really and truly is. Like, it is my favorite form of content that we create. And I just love doing it because there's nothing that I love more than just having good conversation. And obviously having it with one of my best friends makes it even better. So like, and I know that Koji is very similar to me in that respect. Like he really enjoys deep conversation, and he's a very, very deep thinking individual. So like I knew he would be really good at doing something like this. And I just wish him the best, that's all.
He's got a really good sense of humor about him too.
It's very witty.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Witty is the right word.
Absolutely. Well, Mr. Morgan, how have you been after this brief hiatus? I didn't have a word
Yeah, hiatus works.
hiatus works. This brief hiatus that was unintentional. That's the word I was looking for. Was unintentional hiatus.
I've been good. I am currently in the in between jobs, as they say, and it's weird having so much free time. It's like whenever you're working a job, you always wish is like, man, I wish I didn't have to work. But then when you actually get that free time that comes with not having to work or not being able to work, you're like, well, what do I do with myself now?
Right.
Because it's weird. But it's also been nice. There's been a lot of cleaning and cooking that's been done. And
all that time.
It's been good. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds great. You know, I have the exact opposite problem because most of our, I'll just say loyal fan base or whatever knows that I started a new job as well. On top of all the health concerns that I've been having and all the problems and injuries that have plagued me over the last month. I also started a new job after like almost 5 years with the same company. And unfortunately, something that I didn't realize was going to happen was that my new job was going to take like just an ungodly amount of my time. To the point that like it got to where like I would just come home at the end of the day and eat supper and then pretty much just go to bed with Sil after spending just a little bit of time with her. Yeah. And I don't know, I think I'm probably about to just go ahead and throw the old hat in the ring, put myself out there again and see what new jobs I can shake loose, because I work to live, I do not live to work. So
yeah, no, for sure. We were actually just talking about this a few minutes ago about how those people who literally do work their entire life away and brag about it,
I just don't understand it.
Strange, yeah, like how strange of a mindset that is. Because like and a lot of people actually do celebrate this, like, man, you're such a hard worker, you're such a provider, and they get applauded for that, for literally working themselves to into their grave.
Yeah.
But what they're actually saying is like, look at me, I work so much, I have no life or free time. Sure, I provide for my family, but I don't even know who they are. But
yeah, somebody else
sure does.
Somebody else is raising my kids, or my wife barely sees me.
Yeah.
But she's driving a really nice car.
I actually did read this article that was talking about how a lot of marriages, like when somebody is unfaithful in a marriage and cheats, it's most of the time with a coworker, because they spend so much time at work. They spend more time with their coworkers than they do with their own family at home. And so they become closer to those people than they do with their family because they see them every day. Which is really sad. Like, that kind of says a lot. Like, absolutely. A lot of workplaces are always like, yeah, we value work-life balance and all that.
Right. Like, okay, well, if you value work-life balance, let me work 15 hours a week and get paid, you know what I'm saying, a livable wage. Yeah. Or at least 20 hours a week. There's no reason why that couldn't be a possible, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. It wasn't always
impossible, because how would the rich get rich?
I'm sorry. How would Henry Ford afford any more Fords?
If he could afford a Ford.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. Well, great small talk. Oh man, it's good to be back. Anyways, so Morgan, would you like to tell the great, not at all better than everybody else? You guys are better than everybody else. Don't ever forget it. Listeners here.
If you are listening, you are the cream of the crop.
You are. The cream always rises to the top.
Top banana. The big cheese. The creamy banana, as they say.
The creamy banana?
I don't know. You are the cream of the banana.
Do you want to tell them what we are going to talk about today?
Sure. So today, we are going to be talking about, and a lot of you people who have either listened or watched our streams, you know that Foggy is a writer. He writes a lot of short horror stories. He is. Are you still working on your novel?
I am. Yes. Okay. I plan to have it done this year, and I say that every fucking year since I started. But I really do. I plan to have it done in 2024. Not that I'm not sure that I will ever publish it like officially. It may just go on my Patreon. I haven't figured that part out yet. Like I just want to finish it because I know that just the act of finishing the story alone would feel like it would give me that sense of completion that I look for when I do like certain projects and stuff like that. So,
I mean, writing a book is a big thing. Like writing short stories is big on its own, but writing an entire novel that's a monster of a task.
Mm-hmm.
It takes people a long time. That's not something you just like crank out.
Yeah, I mean, I've been working on it since 2021. And I think, maybe it was 2020, because I remember we might have still been in lockdown when I started writing it, which is one of the reasons why I started writing in the first place, or at least started writing that particular story, because I had the time.
Yeah, we had a lot of time then.
Yeah.
But yes, Foggy is a writer, an artiste of the written word,
of the page,
and of the page. Yes,
a mage of the page,
a scribe of the tribe, and that's actually what we're going to be talking about today. Is his stories, and I actually have quite a few questions that I prepared a while back in anticipation for this, because I knew we were going to talk about this eventually. And so I actually made up like a list of questions.
Questions for me? I'm excited. It's gonna feel like
I can't have you
interview.
preparing. Yeah, I can't have you preparing for it. This must be fully genuine.
Yes, I'm excited. I'm so excited. Okay, let's do this thing.
All right. Well, the first one is kind of like a very like obvious question, but like, what made you want to start writing? Like is it something you've always had like a passion and an interest in, or is it something that just one day was like, wow, like actually I really want to do this?
Yeah. So as far as like actually write, and I think we have actually talked in brief detail about this in a previous episode, but I've always been something of a writer. Maybe not like officially, because I would write stories all the time, like really short stories in my room when I was a kid. Excuse me. They were usually, I wouldn't say that they were morbid, no more morbid than any other horror story you would find, but
right.
I would write them because they would, I don't know, it would make me feel better with all the stuff that I had going on in my life pretty much all the time. Writing was a good escape for me to process emotions that maybe I couldn't feel outwardly. And so it was a really good way. It was very therapeutic for me. And once I was finished, I would just crumple them up and throw them away, which is probably my one regret about it, because I would really love to go. And I don't remember the stories that I wrote,
Gotcha.
but I would love to go back and be able to read those and just kind of, you know, take myself back to the emotions and stuff that I was feeling at the time, and just be able to like be like, wow, okay, well, you know, I've grown since then, or you know, what have you.
Yeah.
I just think it would be really special if I was able to do
Yeah. It sounds like it's kind of like journaling for you in a way. Like not
that.
like journaling is more like your current thoughts, feelings, or like recording events
Mhm.
and your thoughts and feelings on those events. Um, but it sounds like it's something similar, but just like in a more fictional
Hmm.
way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's really cool. I honestly like writing is a very 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 helpful. Like I love journaling. I'm not like a write. I don't like write stories really.
Yeah.
Um, I'm much more like I guess auditory with like my more creative outlets.
Yeah.
But I I love reading, and so I people who are actually able to write and like convey ideas in a clear way that really like captivate you. That's a real. I'm always very impressed by people who can do that.
Right.
And you sent me a lot of your stories, and you can definitely do that.
Oh, thank you.
But
I so like um and I know I've touched on this like plenty of times. I've talked about this, but like I've always written stories based upon um, legitimate nightmares that I've had,
Mhm.
and so you always know that my stories, even though they're not coming from a real place, if that's how you want to say it, they're coming from a real, genuine place of like I've always had like really extremely vivid nightmares. Um,
Yeah.
growing up, like all throughout my childhood, um, and when I decided to start writing officially, um, I kind of took, and I've said this before too. I know I took inspiration from the director, the movie director, Wes Craven. Um, and I don't remember if this was in an interview or if it was in like an actual movie that he was in, um, or like it said it in a movie that he directed. But like he actually talked about how all of his ideas for like his most famous films literally came to him from his actual nightmares.
Right.
And I always thought to myself like, wow, I have nightmares that could be crazy movies, or crazy books, you
Right.
know. And I always really thought that was so interesting, and I loved reading Stephen King novels as a kid.
Oh yeah.
Um, and it was always so vivid, his descriptions. And when I decided that I was going to start writing, I decided that I was going to try to pattern myself after that. In a
Yeah.
not so much like in a like trying to take his style sort of way, but just in a I'm going to be really vivid in what I do and what I like how I describe things.
Yeah. And like they say that a picture paints 1,000 words, but I feel like 1,000 words can be so much more effective than a picture, especially like in terms of horror,
Mhm.
because it leaves the visualization. Like you give the person the idea. Like
Mm.
you paint like an outline of it, but everything else is filled in by the reader's imagination.
Right.
And your imagination is much more terrifying than anything else. It's like when like in a lot of movies and books you don't actually see the creature until a long time, because not seeing it, your mind's going wild. It's like, well, what is it?
Right.
Like you hear all these horrible things about what it's done and like what it looks like, and this may out to be this huge terrifying thing, but when you finally see it, you're like, oh well, like it's so really it's dangerous, it's a threat. but like that horror element of it is kind of gone.
Right. Well, I mean, like, a good example of that is like the movie Jaws. You know,
Oh yeah,
you don't see you never see the shark for like, what is it? Something like 80-90% of the movie. You
it's
never
most
see
of
it.
Yeah,
You never see it. You might see a fin. You might hear the music. You might see the person get dragged under the water, but you don't see
you
the
see the
shark.
aftermath. Yeah,
Right. You don't see it, and like the person like floating out in open water. Oh, like it still is just really, really.
it's effective, and it's a
It's
real world
effective.
thing.
Yes.
It's like it's literally just a shark,
Right.
but they paint it as this monster, and
Right.
they do it so well. Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's very cool. So when you're writing, like
Mhm.
when you like let's say you have an idea or something you want to write about, what is kind of like your process? Like you just like throw all your thoughts onto a paper and organize them, or you just kind of like start at like do you? Because I know some people when they write a story or um they have to start from the beginning and they have to do everything chronologically. But other people, there's like no, like sometimes I write the end before I even start anything else. Like
Right.
what is your kind of, I guess, process like?
Mm-hmm. So for me, like I said, I write based upon my nightmares, right?
Yes.
Usually what happens is in my nightmares, it's very rare that I have a nightmare where the events of the dream are happening to other people. They're usually happening to me myself. And
Very
it puts
personal.
me, yeah, it puts me like in a point of view, it puts me as what you would consider the main protagonist of the story.
Right. It's your dream, so yeah.
Right, exactly. And so usually what I do is almost immediately when I wake up and I remember the dream, I go straight to my phone and I literally just write everything that I remember about the dream down.
Oh, okay. So if you wake up, that's you immediately do that.
I will. Yeah. I have like at least 12 to 15 folders of stories where I just wrote it down. Like immediately I was like, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened. It looked like this. The setting was like this. You know, and you know, this is what I did. This was the consequence of what I did. This is how I got away. This is how I died. Whatever it was, you know, whatever the end result is what I wrote. And from there, what I do, excuse me, from there, what I do is I will literally flesh it out. Because usually, you know, my dream will be not quick. Quick's not the right word. But obviously, it won't be enough story for a whole novel.
Quick fap. Sorry.
You're good. You're just fine. It won't be enough for a whole novel. You know, it'll just be essentially like the climax of the story, whatever that is. So what I'll do is I'll flesh it out from there. Like, okay, well, I'm gonna name the characters.
Okay.
It's not me. It's this. It's this person. You know, it's this protagonist, and it's not my siblings who's with me in the story. It's their siblings, and this is their name. We're not in my hometown. We're in this town that I made up.
Yeah. So it's like you remove yourself from this happening to you. It's like instead, like you make it so that your dream is basically you were experiencing the dream through the
character's
protagonist.
eyes. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's like you weren't the protagonist. The protagonist. It was this character.
Exactly. But I just got their point of view in the story, essentially. That's that's how I've wrote all of my stories, as a matter of fact, with the exception of, I want to say 2 or 3 of them that have actually been put out on the internet. And I did those really interestingly because the way I wrote them was like almost like the character themselves was keeping a journal.
Oh, I love those. Yeah, those are so much fun to read.
Mm-hmm. And oh no, and I love that. Like I've always loved that style where it's almost like it almost kind of seems like found footage. You know what I mean? Like it's not a found
or like
footage.
in games when you find like pages of someone's like journal or diary. You know, it's
Yeah,
kind of like documenting
yeah.
things as they go. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I wanted to write a few stories in that type of. I don't like to say is prose the right word? Because there's like formal prose, and I don't think it's prose, but I like to write in that style, because it makes it feel
found
like
entries, not found footage, found entries.
Found entries, yeah. Well, it makes it feel like the person who wrote it is a real person, and it makes you feel like the reader is literally reading the last words or whatever it is of a real person. And I always thought that was really like, that was spooky.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's like if you come across a book, like what'd be really cool is if you actually handwrite all these, like some of your short stories in these like smaller books, and then actually just leave them somewhere, like make it look all battered up and everything, just leave it somewhere out in public and someone finds it. And like you have, it looks like someone's journal, like you got the dates and all this stuff. And like there's like maybe like a few rips and tears in the pages, so like it's weathered.
And unfortunately, I was eating some maraschino cherries while I was writing.
Yeah.
Smeared some cherry juice all over the place. Oh, what's going on with that?
So that'd be so cool. I think that'd be so cool to actually come across something like that. Because then in your mind, it's like, well, did this happen? Like what happened? Or, like what's going on?
Sure.
That's really cool. That's a really cool writing process. I don't like follow many writers, but most of them, their process is very different. It's more like just have an idea for something and then they theme the story around that idea.
Right.
So that's really cool that a lot of yours are more personal, I guess.
Yeah, and you know there's different, and that's not me shitting on anybody else's
no
way.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of people go and like research heavily for whatever they're gonna write about. I don't really do research like that. Like maybe I will. Sometimes I'll not really know how to describe something. And so, like, I'll try to find the closest thing to what I would imagine that thing is. And I'll try to kind of, like, nitpick my way to what it is that I want to, like, convey. But I certainly don't put, months, if even years of research into my stories.
Yeah, there's a lot of authors put a lot of time and effort into their work.
For sure.
I wouldn't have the patience.
Yeah.
All right, so you write a lot of horror, obviously. Are there any other genres that you like to write in, or is it mainly just horror? Like, have you tried branching out to other genres?
So I do have a story in the works. That is, it still kind of has a horror element to it, but I wouldn't consider it a horror story. I would consider it more science fiction.
Oh, okay.
And it's set in a different world. That is way more post-apocalyptic.
Okay.
But it's not like it's not like a zombie. Well, I guess it kind of does that.
But
um,
maybe like just a sprinkling of zombie.
there's always got to be zombies in the
a,
post-apocalyptic
a
world. What are we talking
garnishing
about?
of the undead.
Yeah, a nice little sprinkle, if you will.
Mhm.
No, no, no. I'm really excited about that because like this was it was a dream that I had, but it didn't feel like a nightmare per se. You know, it was very actiony. But like, um, it was literally like I made this whole entire um, like new system of world government,
Oh wow.
and it even had like we as a race or like as a people like the human race, what I mean, um like we're in a new age, instead of like the year wasn't like 2021 or 2024 or whatever. It was like um 350 AFA, which was 350 years after the fall of America. And it's like this really cool. I'll show you the like the cliff notes of it and see what you think about it, cuz it's
Okay.
really fucking cool. And
This sounds really cool.
yeah, and like
Sounds like some Fallout almost.
it kind of is, but like the the main the main character is like this basically super soldier, who's a lab experiment who um he there was only like I believe, if I recall correctly, I haven't looked at these notes in a while, but I think there were uh 60 in all, or like 62 soldiers, and he was like number not 13. That seems so stupid. I think he was like number he might have been the last one, or like one or two before the last one.
Gotcha.
But he is the only one of them left, and the rest of them have been killed. And the main antagonists of the story are like the new world government, which was basically like this disease that ravaged the land, turned like most of the population into basically like vampires, but they were like
Okay.
but they're like feral vampires. They're like zombies, more like, you know. But there were a certain class of people who, when they got infected, they are able to retain their intelligence, and they were
Okay.
like, you could consider them something like higher vampires, right?
Right.
And they run the world. And this one super soldier who doesn't really care about the rest of the world, he just goes around.
He's in survival.
Yeah, he just goes around and kills feral vampires all the time. And there's
Like
just
if
this
Captain
whole
America was a vampire slayer. in an
exactly,
apocalyptic
yeah.
world.
That's a good way to describe it. Yeah, it's just really cool, and I'm really excited to write the story. Like I have all the cliff notes basically for it. I just haven't like sat down and actually wrote the story yet. But it's probably just going to be a short story, unless it does really well and people are like, we want to see more of this.
Yeah.
And I
I
might,
have a lot of questions already.
yeah, I might turn it into an actual series of
Ooh, a series.
like it's either going to be a series of short stories, or it might be like 3 light novels or something.
Okay.
Whatever the case, I haven't decided that yet, but I do know that there's so much lore to it that I know that it could really flesh out and become like a really long story.
So there's
long
so
story.
much you could do with that.
I felt like, because I think if I remember correctly, the world government is run by like it's like 7 of these. I'm just gonna call them higher vampires right now because I don't have a better word. I think it's like 7 or so. I was gonna make each story, like I was gonna make the first story him just kind of introducing this character and kind of what he does and what he's about, and making some cool, like fleshing out his character and stuff like that. And then the rest of the stories I was gonna make like each one he hunts down one of the vampire lords, and he's able to like dispatch each one until he gets to the biggest one.
The banana, the cream of the banana.
The banana, the creamy banana. He gets to the creamy banana.
Wow,
Yeah.
The sweaty cheese. That's actually that's actually really cool. There's so much you could do with that.
Mm-hmm.
I would read it.
Yeah. I'll send you the cliff notes. Just remind me, and I'll do that.
Okay. So, when you're writing something, like what would you say is the thing you struggle with the most? Like, would it be like get into like a character's mindset, like describing the environment? I don't know, like what do you think is the thing you struggle with the most?
I would have to say, this is gonna sound so like not silly, but just like it's gonna sound cliche, I guess. But for me, it's patience. Like I struggle to be patient because sometimes I'll be writing and writing and writing, and it feels like I've been writing for a really long time, and then I'll stop and I'll like kind of just glimpse and read what I've wrote. And I'm like, I haven't wrote fucking shit. This is taking forever. And
Yeah.
it just sometimes, and then on top of that, I struggle with time management so bad. Having ADHD and all, I'm not really good with time management. So like, when I know I can be sitting there and actually working, it doesn't always happen. And so I'll go long periods of time where I don't feel like I have time to sit down and write, even though I do. And like sometimes I'll sit there and I'll be like, man, I need to write, but I'm dreading doing it. But I don't understand that because I really enjoy it. And every time I am on a roll and I'm writing, I feel happy and I feel content and I feel good, and it makes me feel good to do it. So it's just kind of like it's a weird paradigm, I guess.
Yeah. That's I don't know, like that's probably the thing that's most relatable is just having the patience, because like when people read a book or a story, like we kind of think like, oh well, this is like they sat down and just wrote this. It's like you don't see all like the drafts, like everything that was cut and edited or added in afterwards.
Yeah, and see that's another thing that like has stopped progress on my novels several times, is that like I'll finish, like for instance, like I'll finish a chapter, right? And I write different now than I did when I was younger. And so like, and that's even true for like the last couple of years, the way I write things is different now than it was, 3 or 4 years ago. And so like sometimes I'll be writing and then I'll like stop and be like, I just thought about this in this other chapter. I should really change that. I don't like it now. Or I'll read, chapter 2 when I'm literally on chapter 8, and I'll go back to chapter 2 and I'm like, oh yeah, no, I hate this. I need to erase this and redo it. And like that is really, really, yeah, exactly what you just said.
There's a lot that goes into it. Like there's so much editing and proofreading. And it's like, yeah, that's actually a really good point too. Is like if it's something you've been working on for such a large amount of time, and this goes to like several different things, like like apart from writing too, whether it's music, art, like more like drawn, graphic,
Yeah.
and written stuff. There's so many different things that you might like in the moment, but then as time goes on, it's like, well, actually, I changed my mind. I don't like that anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Like I used to like that, but no, not anymore. You got to change the whole thing, and it changes the whole progress of the story going on.
Sure.
So, do you have a favorite short story or book that you've written? Like, is there one that you're really proud of?
Hmm. That's a good question. I am
Or a least favorite.
Ooh. Ooh. Hmm. Okay.
Like, is there one that you look at and it's like, I could do better than that. I want to rewrite that.
Huh.
Or one is like, nope, that is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted.
You know what's funny is I don't have a story that I regret writing. Like I truly don't.
That's awesome.
All of my stories that I have, I really, really enjoy. And I like going back and reading them. Although I will have to say, so I think my most hated story, my most hated short story rather, that I've written has got to be The Tree. Anybody who has gotten onto my Patreon and read The Tree knows what I'm talking about. So The Tree, this is the reason why I hate it. Okay, it's not because it's a bad story. It's honestly, it's a good story, and it connects to the rest of the universe that I've created. But it is literally a recurring nightmare that I've had since I was a child.
Ooh, okay.
And I'm talking about like as far back as I can remember, like 3 or 4 years old, I've been having this dream. And the story is honestly really dark, even for me as a horror writer. Like it deals with topics that would definitely require like a trigger warning to talk about. You know, things that happen in trees, you know what I mean? And this one is no different. And I just like, oh man. I read it and sometimes I'll just go over and just read it again. And I get kind of transported back to that place. And it's honestly a good way for me to like get into the mindset of horror writing, because when I read it, I'm like, oh, I'm so creeped out now. I can. It's crazy that I can creep myself out.
So why is this your most hated then?
I would say probably because the so like I'm pulling it up right now just to look at it. So this story it just I guess the reason I hate it so much is because it brings me back to when I was a little boy.
Gotcha.
You know,
so it's like too well. It's written well.
It's written just like my nightmares were. I would even go so far as to say that it doesn't just feel like a nightmare. It didn't feel like a nightmare as a kid. I would have trouble discerning reality from fiction when it came to this dream.
That's terrible.
And the way I described it in the story was exactly how it was in my head. Excuse me. And yeah, it just brings me to a place where I feel just like a helpless little kid. And so like honestly, I can say I've probably only read this story, and it's one of my shorter ones. Like, I think it's only like just about 700 words, not even. So it's not that long of a story, but like, it is fucking effective. At least for me, I read it and I'm like, I hate this. I hate this. But it needed to happen.
Well, on that note, if anybody listening wants to actually read any of these stories that we're talking about, or actually like see firsthand the stories, or like see how these kind of like how these questions and Foggy's writing process, the inspiration, like what these have all kind of manifested into. Just so you know, this podcast is sponsored by Foggy Short Horror Stories, which you can find on Patreon.
You can find it on Patreon.
See if the short story, The Tree, triggers you and gives you PTSD. After reading it, this story is so effective that after reading it, you too will have trouble discerning reality from fiction.
Yes, of course. Yes, you can find Foggy's Horror Stories on Patreon. I can try to link it in the description. I don't know how well it'll do with Spotify, but
we just put like the name of your Patreon.
Yeah, I could just do that too. Yeah, that'll be fine. And of course, nobody is obligated to go over there, but if you do want some good stuff, I really do believe in my stories, and I think that they're pretty good. I would be so honored for people to go over there and read them, and then message me on whatever their social media, and let me know what they thought about it, because that's the main reason why I write them, is because I want other people to be able to read them and give me feedback and let me know that either like they enjoyed it, or this story was sick, Foggy. Like, why would you ever write something like that? And I'm like, because I'm fucked up.
It's like, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
It's like, you can put the book down, I live it.
Mm-hmm. So
that is my mind.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you a quick question as well, Morgan.
Oh, okay.
When you look for a horror story, right? When you, as a consumer, let me say it like that, as a reader, what do you look for in a good horror story?
I think it's not necessarily it does in a horror story. I guess the thing that I look for is, or the thing that gets to me the most, is what the character is going through, like what they're feeling. Like if the writer can really put me into the shoes of the character who's going through this horrific event or dealing with this like a monster or a situation, like if they can make me feel what they're feeling, then that's a good one. That's a good story. Like, that's very, very well done. I think the first, well, maybe not the first one, but a story that comes to mind is, have you read the Maze Runner books?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I think it's in the second one. It's been so long since I've read these books.
Oh yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, I think it's in the second one. This is after they get out of the maze. They're in this kind of like abandoned area, like out in this wasteland, and there are these people who've been mutated, and they're like all deranged and really savage. But there's this guy this old man who's wandering around, wanting one of the characters' noses, because he doesn't have one. Like it was like ripped off or bitten off or something. But he didn't have a nose, and so like that's this whole thing. He's insane. And he's like nose. Do you have a nose? I want your nose. Nice nose, and all this stuff, And he's stalking and hunting down some of these characters, and the book did such a good job of putting me in those characters' shoes that it was so unsettling, and that's what really made that part of the book for me. So I would say, like that kind of feeling, like making me feel very unsettled.
Yeah. Good. That's good. I like that.
What about you?
I like a story, more specifically with horror. I don't want just straight spooks. You know what I mean? Like, I want it to be very psychological. And I've always liked the stories where the antagonist, whether that's a monster or just a bad guy or some type of otherworldly force or whatever the thing is, or like madness or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes the antagonist isn't really a person or a thing. It's like an abstract concept.
Okay.
I've always liked stories where whatever it is that the antagonist is, like, essentially like plays with its food,
Oh, okay.
and made it very psychological on the reader.
You want a Sephiroth and Cloud situation.
Yeah, that's a good way to. Yeah. I'm a glutton for punishment, and so by that logic, I want to be thinking that I know what's about to happen, and on the edge of my seat. Whether and I do this not only for books but also movies. Like, I want to be like, oh no, here comes a jump scare, or here comes this or that. I'm going to try to interpret what's going to happen before it happens, because that's just how I am.
Right.
And I like being wrong. It gets a bigger payout when I'm wrong. Just like it gets a payout when I'm right. And I the reaction that I get from movies, it's the same with books. And because, like you said before, I really enjoy books where I can paint the picture myself in my brain.
Right.
Because being able to do that, and I can do that very well. And with somebody like, for instance, like Stephen King, who is very descriptive. Obviously, I'm going to be able to put myself in the situation,
Right.
and that's what I like.
Yeah, Stephen King has some. I mean, he's Stephen King.
He's Stephen King.
Like, guy speaks for itself.
Yeah, he's Stephen King. Now, I mean, obviously, there are a few stories where it's like, all right, bud, you've been hitting the booger sugar. Quite a bit. Your boy Foggy does not do the booger sugar, by the way, before anybody asks. No, I don't. Maybe if I did, I could stay up a little longer. I'm so tired.
Then you could like really like crank out some stories then.
I could crank out some stories if I just stopped sleeping for a couple weeks.
Yeah, crank out some stories, make all the content, work 5 jobs at the same time,
and learn how to draw for illustrations.
Yup.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's like with your stories. When you're writing a character, like let's say that like certain characters weren't in your dream or like in your source of inspiration, you have to create a character and put them in your stories.
Mm-hmm.
Does your character creation, like where does the inspiration for characters come from? Like whether it comes from naming them, or
I was gonna say, do you mean physically?
the character as a whole?
Okay. So I would say that depends. Okay.
Okay.
Because it depends on, am I writing this for a greater universe? Am I writing this just for a one-off story? Because those things matter, right? And I try to take into account, um, like wherever the story is, the local place, the local norms. For instance, and I know I've released a snippet of my book on Patreon. You can go check that out, foggyhorrorstories.com or on Patreon, Foggy's Horror Stories. If you want to see a little snippet of the novel that I'm writing, it's on there. The story takes place in Missouri. Because I spent a lot of years there, unfortunately, and I'm very familiar with it. So I'm able to pull from what I actually know, not just about, the culture or even like the names of towns and like the region, but also like I'm able to be like, okay, well, somebody who lives here would be named something like this. They're not gonna have some fancy, crazy name from like California. They're not gonna have, because people out in California tend to name their kids weird stuff. And that's not a knock on them or anything. I've noticed that like people with really interesting names usually seem to come from the West.
Outside of the Midwest area,
right?
Outside of that Bible Belt,
right? Exactly. And you're gonna see, and that's actually what I'm about to say. Is like you're gonna see a lot of like really, like traditional and biblical names in Missouri and Arkansas. So it depends. It depends on, like what's the universe that I'm writing in? Am I writing in this great, this big universe that I've created with multiple stories all interweaved into the greater story? Or am I just writing a one-off story? Because like I'm gonna choose differently with those things.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Okay then. Well, I have one final question for you.
Yay!
And I don't know if I don't know. I feel like you could answer this.
Okay.
But like in your own words, like if someone were to come up to you saying that they wanted like say someone read your stories and they're really inspired by that, and they asked you like, well, I want to be able to write stories like this also, I really want to be able to write like that, and they asked you for advice, what kind of advice would you give an aspiring writer who is inspired by the things you've written?
So I haven't per se had that happen yet. I have had a couple of people come to me for advice on like, they're like, I know that you write. I am also writing and I'm wondering what you do for this, or like how do you manage to do this, and I'll give them a little bit of advice. But if somebody was like, hey, I've always wanted to write, and you inspired me to start doing that, do you have any pointers? I think I can only think of two things off the top of my head that I would tell them. The first one would be just do it. Like you're not going to start writing unless you just pick up a pen, pick up the notepad, pick up the phone, pick up the tablet, or whatever it is, whatever medium that you're using to create that written word art. Just start doing it. That's the the best way for you to get started is to just do it.
Do it.
Yeah, I was actually about to say, to quote the Senate.
Senator Palpatine.
Yes, I gotta quote the Senate. He is the Senate.
He is. And the Empire. Who did in fact strike back.
He did. He struck back. Number 2, I would also say is oh no, I just lost it. I lost it in my brain. Hold on, I'm gonna remember it. Let me drink the rest of my water. Oh yes. So the last thing that that I would want to tell them is, don't just churn out schlock for no reason, just because you have a deadline or you know what I mean, that you want to get out a whole bunch of content very, very, very quickly. It does nobody, including yourself, any good to just churn out like mindless gook. Like, there's already enough of that on the internet. There's enough of that.
It's not a book, that's a gook.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with taking your time, making sure your product is right, making sure that you have the story that you've written that you wanted, and you have the entire picture painted exactly as you want it before you go ahead and say, yep, I'm putting my stamp on that. It's ready to go. Signed, sealed, delivered. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those would be the things that I would say, because that's, I don't ever want to be that. I don't want to be like a corporate, I don't want to call it a sellout, because like there are plenty of authors who are famous authors who never sold out. But you can't tell me that all of, for instance, Stephen King's books are great. They're not. He's got quite a few stinkers. And as a matter of fact, he would even admit that. He would say that. He would tell you, yeah, some of these were not my work, or not my best work. Or, yeah, I was doing so much cocaine when I wrote that, I don't even... Did you know... No, real fact. Did you know that Stephen King does not remember writing the book Cujo?
I didn't know that he doesn't remember doing it. I knew he did a bunch of nose powder, but I did not know that he just flat out didn't remember it.
He doesn't even remember writing Cujo, because that's how much. That's how much booga sugar he was doing.
Booga sugar. So, I definitely agree with what you said, though, because like a lot of people, they will like it's scary putting something you've made out there for people to see or hear and to put their own opinions on. Like that's a very scary thing to do. And so a lot of people, they'll use the excuse like, well, I'm not ready yet. It's not like I need everything to be perfect before I do this. If you wait for something, if you wait for circumstances to be perfect and ideal, you'll never get started. And I feel like if you don't risk failure, you don't deserve success. So yeah, like Foggy said, do it.
Yes.
Like the best teacher is experience. So absolutely just make something that you're proud of, do your best and put it out there. And from that point on, if it doesn't succeed, that's a lesson for next time.
Absolutely. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with getting second opinions on your work. You know?
Yeah.
Now, granted, you're going to get a lot of unsolicited advice that you don't need to listen to. You write how you want to write, how you see fit. If you're happy with it, great. Nobody else's opinion matters. But there's nothing wrong with getting solicited advice from, trusted people who you can send your stories to. And it can be like, I do this different. I might tweak this a little bit. Or, this was really good. Like, you should be really proud of this. and then you can adapt it. Either A, you could say, you know what, no, I choose to reject whatever it is that they said. I like how it is. Okay, great. Then do it that way. Or B, you know what, that's a good point. Maybe I should refine this a little bit. And you end up learning a lesson. There's nothing wrong with failing. It's sometimes a better teacher than succeeding. So yeah.
100%. But, I mean, that's about all the questions I've got. I thought it was actually really good. I feel like you really explained not just your writing process, but a lot of the challenges that people can face, or that you specifically face, and where like a lot of your inspiration comes from. Also,
Absolutely.
upcoming projects.
Yes, I do actually have another 2 short stories that I'm working on, whilst also working on the novel. And one of them was not actually based upon a nightmare for once. I will actually give you I'll give you all the inside scoop on this particular story, and we'll wrap it up. The other I say the other day, like it wasn't like 2 months ago now, but about 2 months ago, me and Sylvie were driving home, and we pulled up on our street. Morgan, you've seen our street. You know what our street looks like.
Yeah.
Well, across the way from our house, there's this tree. And at the tree, like sitting at the trunk at the bottom of the base of the tree, was this cell phone. And it was on, and it was ringing. And there was nobody around. This is in the middle of the night. This is like 11 o'clock at night. And the phone is ringing. And there is nobody in sight. It's pitch black outside. There was it was just silent as the grave. There was nothing going on. And Sylvie looks at me and she's like, hey, maybe I should go answer it. I was like, have you? Hell no. No, you don't answer that phone. I was like, that is the beginning of a terrible horror movie. And then my freaking brain just clicked. I was like, oh my God, this is a great idea for a story.
It's like, wait, that's the beginning of a terrible horror movie.
Exactly. I was like, this is going to be a great story, even if it's just like some dumb, somebody answers the phone and now they're going to die type thing.
I would have answered that.
Would.
I'm that white.
Yes, yes, you would. I'd be like, Morgan, please.
I actually went to an abandoned building the other week. That was fun.
Oh man. But anyways, I think that's gonna wrap it up for the episode. I feel good about it.
Yeah. I feel like it was a lot of fun.
It's a really good return. And yeah, I really look forward to what we've got planned in the future, because I know for sure we have 2 collaborations that we need to reschedule.
Yes.
So I will reach out and let them know and see about rescheduling for both of those very special guests. And I think that's going to wrap up the episode.
All right. Sounds pretty good.
All right.
I'm really excited about it.
Yeah. I'm so excited for everybody to hear this one. Welcome back, Morgan and Foggy in the motherfucking coffee lounge. Ah, man. It's good to be back. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening in and tuning in. We really hope to see you guys in the next one. You can follow Morgan on all that their social media, anywhere that, anywhere that Morgan can be found, you can find him. And of course, you can follow me, Foggy LeBeau, at all that their social media, everywhere that old Foggy LeBeau can be found.
Yes,
and
thank you guys for listening, for any kind of support. It really does mean the world to us. And any feedback that you guys have is more than welcome. It's actually encouraged.
Absolutely.
And yeah, because everything that any kind of interaction that we get on this is just more inspiration and encouragement to make more. I mean, we're still gonna make more because we just enjoy it, but at the same time, any feedback is also very, very welcome.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point, Morgan. I actually appreciate you bringing that up. Yeah, absolutely. If you like what you hear, we would really appreciate a like. We would appreciate a share, and definitely let us know. Like, did you like the content? What other content would you like to see from us? What would you like to hear us talk about? And no, well, I won't say no subject is off limits, but you can always ask.
Yes, you can ask if it's something that we're on board with and that is acceptable.
Yes.
We will most likely at least incorporate it into a discussion.
Absolutely.
But if you just don't hear it, then that's a no.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All right. Well, nonetheless, we really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in on this episode of Morgan and Foggy in the Coffee Lounge. We hope to see you in the next one. And peace out.
Adios.
Bye.